Today we're doing top 10 point guards. All the lists are based on last season's performances, like the season that just ended. A couple of caveats: a person has to have played at least half the season. So they have to have played at least 41 games. That eliminates some guys like Damian Lillard, that eliminates guys like Lonzo. Those are the first two main guys that came to mind, and we're only talking about what they did last season, because some of the guys that, we traditionally might have a little higher, I'm thinking of a guy like maybe James Harden, probably isn't as high because of his season last year. We're not going off the fact that a guy may have been an MVP a couple years ago, a guy may have been all NBA a couple of years ago, things like that. Yes, also no Kyrie because he didn't play enough games. So that'll give you the mind frame where I'm coming from when I put this list together. But as you can see, I want to say I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 guys. It's a 12-guy pool, like I said, because of some injuries. If Kyrie was here, healthy, he would be here. If Dame was here, healthy, he would be here. If Lonzo was healthy, honestly, the way he was playing, he'd probably at least be in the pool. We'd have a couple more people to pick from. I really think these were the top of the top guards when it came to this season. So number 10, I'm going with a guy who's a first-time All-Star, who had what I think was a pretty solid season. Sophomore year, becoming an All-Star, continuing to grow. This is a guy whose shooting, I think, finally got to where closer to what we expect and what we hope it will be. At number 10, I'm going with LaMelo Ball. I think he had a really good season. It sucks that the whole Miles Bridges situation happened, and that team is now going to be worse due to nothing of their own control. I'll just leave it at that. That team will be worse due to nothing of their own control, simply because some people wanted to be dumb, aka Miles Bridges wanted to be crazy. But LaMelo had a great season. I like him a lot. Like I said, I feel like he finally became or started to show some of that shooting ability that we expected to see from him coming into the season. He didn't necessarily shoot as well his freshman year, or his rookie year, I should say. But now he's improved his shooting a lot, especially that three-point shooting that we all expected to see from him coming out of college and high school. Well, coming out of high school. At the number 9 spot, and this is where I think I'm gonna upset some people. At number 9, I'm going to Jonte Murray. Now, another first-time All-Star. Hey, Guru, what's good, man? Thanks for coming up to the stream. At number 9, we're going to Jonte Murray, another first-time All-Star, another guy who had a really, really good year, a guy who really stuffed the stat sheet and I think catapulted himself into this conversation. Last year, to me at least, he wasn't in this conversation of top 10 point guards. This year, he said, no, I'm here. Like, I'm one of those guys. 21, almost average a triple-double, 21, 9, and 8 on some good field goal efficiency. I wish his three-point shot was a little bit better personally. He shot about 32% on 4 attempts a game. I would love to see him be able to shoot a little bit more, especially going into this upcoming season, playing alongside Trey Young. He's going to have to be able to shoot the ball a little bit more to be able to play alongside of Trey Young, I think. I think it's going to be times when he isn't going to have the ball as much in his hands. I'm very curious to see how they work their lineups, because I'll tell you right now, I expect Trey Young to probably be the point guard for this Hawks team. So that would mean Jonte Murray is going to be the shooting guard, and he won't be on our point guard lists. I'm not one of those guys who thinks teams have 2 point guards. For example, when James Harden and Kyrie were on the same team together, if that team would have stayed together throughout all season, I personally would have classified James Harden as the point guard on that team, and I would have made Kyrie the 2. I'm not a guy who thinks 2 guys are the same position on that same team. Let me pull it up. At number 8, I have Drew Holiday. Drew's a guy who, for me, let me just start to say I'm a big fan of two-way guys. To me, Drew Holiday had the argument for being in Defensive Player of the Year conversations over Marcus Smart. Like, he was at least in that conversation, in that world, in my mind. Drew Holiday's two-way play is absolutely insane. His ability to shoot the ball, to be a floor spacer around Giannis, around Chris Middleton, is great as well. The playmaking is there. He's a great third option, and we saw during times last season, especially when Chris Middleton went down, that although I don't think you want him to be your number 2 guy, just being honest with you, I think at times he can step up. He played a lot better as the number 2 guy than I was expecting him to, because I was definitely skeptical once he went down. I was like, well, Drew can sometimes be a little iffy when he tries to do more offensively, but he stayed pretty consistent for the Bucks. They were definitely missing Middleton, obviously, but he stayed consistent, and I love his game. Absolutely love his game. At the number 7 spot, I think I have somewhat of a controversial pick. It's a guy who I really like. It's a guy who I've grown to like more and more. To me, he had a rocky start to his season, but the second half of his year was pretty good. At number 7, I'm going James Harden. James Harden, although while he didn't look amazing on the Nets, and while I think, and we can all agree that his shooting numbers were down, his field goal percentage was down, his three-point percentage was down, they weren't never bad. James Harden still averaged, I want to say 22 and 11. I'll pull it up for you right now. Yeah, James Harden still averaged 22 and 10, 33% from the field, which is not great, and then 41% from the field goal range, which is also not great. But his playmaking, especially once he got to the 76ers, was phenomenal. Everyone in the starting lineups, points per games went up. Joel jumped up to like 33 when they played together. Maxi's points per game went up, and he became one of the best three-point shooters in the league. One of the only guys whose points didn't necessarily go up was Tobias Harris's, and I'm not even mad at that because he just stayed where he was after dropping from arguably the second, third option to clearly the fourth option with the emergence of Maxey and adding Harden to the team, and his points per game didn't drop. I think Harden had a really solid year for the Sixers. Do I wish he shot the ball better? Of course I do. But I can't deny his playmaking. Joel Embiid and James Harden had one of the most efficient pick and rolls in the league, one of the most deadly pick and rolls in the league when they were doing it. His playmaking had an immediate impact on the Sixers, even if there were some nights where he was not shooting the ball like we expect him to. So at number 6, this is where I have Chris Paul. Where is he at? Where's my guy at? At number 6, I have Chris Paul. Now, before everyone in the chat goes crazy saying, well, you know, talking about the Chris Pauls in the playoffs against the Dallas Mavericks with the Phoenix Suns, I said all season how much I loved the Phoenix Suns. I had the Phoenix Suns going back to the finals, and honestly, they were my favorite to win the finals for the majority of the season, and a lot of that was because of how well Chris Paul ran the Phoenix Suns offense. To me, Chris Paul is still one of the best point guards in the league. He led the league in assists per game. He was one of the leaders in clutch performances, whether that be scoring, field goal percentage. When you look at all the clutch numbers and clutch metrics, he won the Suns a lot of regular season games because of his performance down the stretch in those fourth quarters. I'm very curious to see what version of Chris Paul we get this season based off of how he performed in the Dallas Mavericks series. Obviously, was the Dallas Mavericks series disappointing? Yes. But like I said at the beginning, this ranking is based on the entire season performance. And for all of the regular season, Chris Paul, to me, had the argument, was you could have made the argument that he was the top 5 point guard, and I would have been mad at you. For most of last season, he was that good. So now that we got our bottom 5 of LaMelo at 10, Jonte at 9, Drew at 8, Harden at 7, Chris Paul at 6, excuse me, I want to give some shout out to the honorable mentions. I'm going to tell you who my honorable mentions are. Marcus Smart and De'Aaron Fox. They're not going to make this list. I'm just going to let you know right now. They're not going to make this list. I put them in there to kind of, because I wanted to give them their flowers. Marcus Smart winning Defensive Player of the Year last year. Marcus Smart, to me, I think was really underrated. Not just his defense, but also some of his playmaking, his shooting. In the beginning of the year, when the Celtics were struggling a lot, it was a lot of who's going to be our point guard. They were still running with Dennis Schroeder a little bit. They weren't fully committed to running Marcus Smart. And then I think part of what helped them go on that amazing run in the beginning of this calendar year was saying we're going with Marcus Smart, and he was a big piece of that. De'Aaron Fox also had a really, really great season. He was one of the league leaders in finishing in the paint, and that is really impressive when you really think about the fact that the Kings probably had the worst spacing in the NBA last year. So he has the worst spacing on the court and is still finishing at the rim at one of the highest clips in the league. That was really, really impressive. I'm really excited to see what De'Aaron Fox and the Kings can do coming into this season. Is there a world where I think either of those guys could break the top 10 going into next year? Maybe. But honestly, I'm not really certain because like we said, Dame will be back. Potentially Kyrie or Ben will be back. Lonzo will be back. There's a lot of guys who's going to be back, so it's going to be tough. But I'll say I'm optimistic. Darius Garland is my number 5. Darius Garland had a really great year, y'all. And I think I was split. So I did a lot of looking into the bottom 3. I was pretty solid on between LaMelo, Drew, and Jonte Murray. This 3 right here of James Harden, Chris Paul, and Darius Garland was really, really tough for me. I did a lot of back and forth and moving these guys around, really trying to looking at different numbers. I was on B-Ball Index, shout out to them. I was on Cleaning the Glass. I was on Basketball Reference. I was doing a lot of thought went into this. The James Harden being at 7, like we talked about, was because he had a rough start to his season. Chris Paul being at 6 was because although, yes, he led the league in assists per game and he ran a beautiful offense, the scoring necessarily wasn't there like it used to be. To me, Darius Garland had a great year for the entirety of the season. The scoring at all levels of the court was there. The three-point shot is there. He has that beautiful float / mid-range pull-up game that he's able to utilize when bigs go into drop coverage, when he's doing pick and rolls with guys like Evan Mobley and guys like Jared Allen. His lob game to Jared Allen and Mobley is on point. He's able to put the ball exactly where they want it, so they go in and finish the lobs. And he's able to just run a really, really good offense for this team. And he's not bad on defense. He's a solid defender. I like Darius Garland's game a lot. Once again, another first-time All-Star, definitely well-deserving. Had a really, really great season. I got him in number 5. Top 4 was interesting because the top 4 is where you get into conversations where I think, well, maybe not who's the best point guard in the league, but I think the top 4 at different times throughout the season, there were a conversation at least of who's the best point guard in the league. And I think, once again, at one point in the season, all 4 of these guys' names popped up. But at number 4, I'm going with Ja Morant. Ja Morant had an absolutely electrifying season. He had an amazing, amazing season. At one point in the world, for a lot of people, he was in MVP conversations. I don't know if I would personally go that far, but he was in the conversations. He's an electrifying player. The scoring ability is there. The finishing around the rim is there. The biggest leap forward that separates Ja Morant this year from last year is 3-point shooting. We were all kind of like, okay, Ja, we know you can get to the rim, but if you can start to knock down that 3 at a high clip, you'll be very hard to guard because now we're worried about the 3. Ja continues to grow and now develops a really reliable and consistent mid-range game that will completely open up the floor for him. Ja Morant, well-deserved at the 4 spot in my mind. I'm going to go with Trey Young. At number 3, I have Trey Young. Trey Young, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again, and I'm probably going to keep saying it till it's not true anymore. Trey Young is a walking top 10 offense by himself. You put him on any team in the NBA, he's a top 10 offense. He led the league in total points. He led the league in total assists. I want to say it was the first time a player's done that, and when it happened and when the news was announced, I knew when the last time that happened, but it's a rare feat to say the least. The only thing that's really holding Trey Young back is that he's a subpar defender, like a way subpar defender. But the offense that he brings to your team balances that out for sure. He's a interesting point about Ja and Trey. One thing I will give props to Ja about is his leadership. The guys on that team rally around Ja. We see it on the court all the time. Ja is a verbal leader for this team. I don't know if I can necessarily say that about Trey Young. We've heard rumors and rumblings about some of the drama I'll say in quotation marks, that has gone on in Atlanta Hawks' locker room and stuff like that, with guys not wanting to play together, things like that, whatever. But I can't deny his offensive, I don't have another way to say it, but offensive superpower. I don't have another phrase for it. Number 1 and 2 were very, very, very tough for me. Obviously, we're talking Steph and Luka here. Steph won the finals MVP this past season. Steph started out the season so hot. Like, Steph started out the season, the first, I'll say 2, from the beginning of the season to January, I was like, oh, Steph's winning the MVP. It was no doubt in my mind. I was like, Steph's the MVP, no doubt in my mind. And on the flip side, then he gets into, the slump. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. He gets into the slump. Then he still finishes out the season very well, but not necessarily at the level he was to start the season. Luka is very similar to Trey. Luka is a one of one. Luka is a guy who, as we saw, this is a perfect example of it, lead his team to playoff success. Granted, did they win the championship? No, but they got to the Western Conference Finals. And Luka is a guy, if I'm being real, he's a guy who, that Mavericks team, and I'm trying to find the best way to say this. When I look at the Mavericks roster to start this season, they weren't necessarily anyone on that roster that stood out to me as Kristaps Porzingis was supposed to be that, but it didn't work out. But this is a team that has the pieces that'll work. This is a team that has good starter caliber players. They had okay guys, but not amazing guys. Luka has turned some of these guys, because of his own gravity, because of his own playmaking, into really good starter caliber guys. We already saw it. My next statement literally is about to be, Luka's going to be the type of guy that gets people paid. And we already starting to see it with Jalen Brunson. Now, am I saying Jalen Brunson only got paid because he played with Luka? No. But I do think his game complemented Luka so well that everyone was able to see, oh, snap, Jalen Brunson is nice. And so he goes and get a bag with the Knicks. So I think there's some pros and cons to both. But to me, for number 2, I'm going with Luka Doncic. And obviously, that means for number 1, I'm going with Steph Curry. We talked a lot about Luka, how great he is, and how Luka's going to be the face of the league in a couple of years. Let's be real here. If not already. Luka will be the face of the league in a couple of years. We talked about Steph's slump. I want to talk about Steph and why I picked him as number 1 over Luka. We talked about Steph's slump in that January, February time frame where he was going for and gunning for the 3-point title, and he was missing a lot during them couple of weeks there. But even with Steph's slump, it's not like Steph's numbers were bad. It's not like there wasn't, at every shot he took, you didn't expect it still to go in. Steph had an amazing season. 25, 5, and 6 doesn't sound crazy, but he still shot 38% from 3, which is low for him, but that's still really good 3-point shooting. The gravity that we love to talk about when it comes to Steph Curry was still there at an all-time high. To me, Steph's number 1 point guard in the league still. So to go over my list, just from top to bottom, it's Steph, Luka, Trey Young, John Morant, Darius Garland, Chris Paul, James Harden, Drew Holiday, DeJounte Murray, and LaMelo Ball.